My name is Bianca Russo. I'm 32 years old, and until recently, I believed stability meant safety. I believed if two people built enough routines together, enough history, enough shared habits and private jokes and lazy Sunday mornings, then eventually those things hardened into permanence. I thought love became durable over time, like sea glass smoothed by years of friction. I was wrong. Because sometimes a relationship doesn't explode all at once. Sometimes it quietly rots underneath you while you're still decorating it like a future. Daniel Mercer and I had been together for 5 years. We lived together for 4 of them in a downtown apartment that always smelled faintly of coffee beans and Bruno's dog shampoo. Bruno was our rescue boxer mix, oversized and emotionally dramatic. The kind of dog who sighed like a disappointed middle-aged man whenever either of us stopped petting him. I genuinely thought we had a life together. Not a flashy one. Not influencer perfect. Real. Or at least, real enough for me. Daniel was 34, handsome in that polished, camera-ready way people instinctively trusted. He knew exactly how to smile during conversations, exactly how long to maintain eye contact, exactly how to make every interaction feel personal. That charm used to make me feel chosen. Toward the end, it mostly made me tired. The truth is, Daniel loved attention almost as much as he loved control. His entire existence revolved around presentation. Every dinner had to be photographed. Every vacation required staged candids. Every argument somehow transformed into vague inspirational quotes online about protecting your peace. Meanwhile, I was private by nature. I liked moments that belonged only to the people inside them. That difference had become a quiet fracture between us long before I realized it. Last Tuesday started like every other ordinary evening that eventually becomes important in hindsight. I cooked dinner while Daniel sat on the couch, scrolling endlessly through his phone. Some reality competition show played in the background, something involving glass-blowing artists screaming at each other over melted sculptures. Daniel barely looked up from his screen. His thumb moved rapidly. Typing. Deleting. Typing again. At one point, I asked who he was talking to. He smiled without looking at me. Work stuff. Something about the answer felt rehearsed. But when you love someone long enough, you start learning how to ignore tiny discomforts. You smooth them over. You explain them away. You become an expert in emotional self-editing. By 11, I was exhausted. I leaned over the couch and kissed the top of his head. I'm going to bed. He muttered absently, face illuminated by his screen. That should have hurt more than it did. I fell asleep listening to the faint tapping of his fingers against glass. Then, around 2 in the morning, I woke up thirsty. The apartment felt strange immediately. Too quiet. I walked toward the kitchen and noticed the living room lights were still on. But Daniel wasn't there. At first, I assumed he had fallen asleep somewhere else in the apartment. Then I noticed the front hallway. His keys were missing. His overnight bag was gone. So was the expensive leather jacket he always wore when he wanted to impress people. A cold sensation crawled slowly down my spine. I grabbed my phone to call him. That's when the notification appeared. Instagram story update. Daniel Mercer. I opened it. And just like that, my entire life split into a before and after. The photo showed Daniel sitting inside some dimly lit rooftop bar downtown. A brunette woman leaned against him, laughing, while he held a champagne flute toward the camera. His arm wrapped possessively around her waist. He looked happy, relaxed, free. The caption underneath the photo felt like someone sliding a knife directly between my ribs. Some women inspire growth. Others keep you stuck. Glad I finally leveled up. He tagged the woman. Vanessa Hale. For a second, I genuinely couldn't breathe. 5 years. 5 years reduced to an Instagram story posted at 2 in the morning, like the launch campaign for a new relationship. But strangely, the worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the performance of it. The deliberate humiliation. The casual cruelty required to publicly replace someone before the relationship had even officially ended. My hands shook as I clicked Vanessa's profile. Public, of course. Women like Vanessa always keep their profiles public. The feed was exactly what I expected. Luxury restaurants, designer handbags, beach vacations, smiling selfies taken from carefully practiced angles. Then I saw him. Her husband, Carter Hale. There was an entire maternity photo shoot posted only 3 weeks earlier. Vanessa stood beside Carter wearing a cream-colored dress, one hand resting against a visibly pregnant woman's stomach. Eleanor Hale, Carter's wife. His very pregnant wife. Carter kissed Eleanor's forehead while smiling at the camera like a man convinced his life was perfect. The caption read, "Counting down the days until we meet our daughter. Couldn't ask for a stronger woman beside me." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then something inside me went completely still. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Clarity. Pure, terrifying clarity. Daniel thought he controlled the narrative. That was his mistake. I didn't call him. I didn't text. I didn't scream or throw things or collapse dramatically onto the kitchen floor like women do in movies. Instead, I walked quietly into our office and opened the shared laptop. Our engagement photos were still saved there. Hundreds of them. We'd hired a professional photographer 6 months earlier after Daniel proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. In those pictures, we looked happy. I looked at him like he was home. He looked at me like he deserved worship. I selected my favorite photo, the one where he kissed my temple while I laughed against his shoulder. Then I opened my nearly inactive Instagram account. I uploaded the engagement photo. My caption was one word. Congratulations. I tagged Daniel. I tagged Vanessa. Then, after 30 seconds of searching, I found Eleanor Hale's account. Public profile. Nursery photos. Pregnancy updates. Baby shower decorations. I tagged her too. Then I placed my phone face up on the kitchen counter and sat down on the floor beside Bruno. He wandered over sleepily and rested his heavy head against my knee. The notification started less than 60 seconds later. First, Daniel. Then, Vanessa. Then, unknown numbers. Then, mutual friends. My phone began vibrating non-stop against the counter, like something alive. Across the room, Daniel's forgotten iPad lit up repeatedly on the coffee table. Messages. Calls. Group chats exploding in real time. I sat there in complete silence while multiple lives collapsed simultaneously through Wi-Fi and touchscreens. At 2:37 in the morning, my apartment became the center of a digital wildfire. And somehow, sitting there on the kitchen floor, with Bruno breathing against my leg, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't devastated yet. I was calm. That scared me more than the betrayal itself. By morning, the apartment sounded haunted. Daniel's iPad kept buzzing from the coffee table, lighting up every few seconds with names I recognized and names I didn't. Friends, cousins, former co-workers, people who had probably never cared about our relationship until it became entertainment. I put my own phone on airplane mode. Not because I was afraid. Because silence was the only thing I still owned. Around 7, someone started pounding on the apartment door. Hard. Desperate. Angry. Bruno barked once, then backed behind my leg. I looked through the peephole. Daniel stood in the hallway, looking nothing like the polished man from his Instagram story. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled like he had slept in a car or someone else's bed. "Bianca, open the door," he snapped. "I know you're in there." I didn't move. He hit the door again. "You're insane! Do you understand what you've done?" Then his phone rang. He turned away, pacing. "No, Mom, it's not what it looks like," he said sharply. "Bianca is being dramatic. Vanessa is just a friend. Yes, she's married, but that situation is complicated." There it was. The first draft of the lie. I stood there, barefoot in my own hallway, Listening to the man I had planned to marry turned betrayal into a misunderstanding before breakfast. Eventually, he left. But the consequences didn't. The first email came from Daniel. It was long, messy, and almost impressive in its self-pity. According to him, I had ruined his reputation, endangered Vanessa, embarrassed his family, and exposed something private that I had no right to touch. He called me unstable,
vindictive, cruel.
Not once did he call himself unfaithful. The second email came from a lawyer. That one made my stomach tighten. It was a cease and desist letter from an expensive firm representing Vanessa and Carter Hale. It accused me of harassment, defamation, intentional emotional distress, and malicious interference in a private family matter. For 1 minute, fear cut through my numbness. Then I read it again. The whole letter depended on one claim: that I had lied. But I hadn't. I posted a real engagement photo. I wrote, "Congratulations." I tagged real people involved in a real situation Daniel had already made public. No accusation. No invented story. Just context. And context was apparently more dangerous than screaming. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots of Daniel's story, screenshots of Vanessa's profile, Carter and Eleanor's maternity shoot, dates, captions, emails, threats, missed calls. Every message Daniel sent trying to rewrite what happened. Then I called my lawyer, Marcus Reed. Marcus had handled my freelance contracts for years. He was calm in a way that made other people nervous. After I explained everything, he read the letter twice and sighed. "It's mostly scare tactics," he said, "but take the post down." My chest tightened. "That feels like letting them win." "No," Marcus said. "It makes you look reasonable. You made your point. The internet already took screenshots. Now we move from emotion to evidence." So I deleted it. It hurt more than I expected. But Marcus was right. The social battle was already over. The legal one was just beginning. That evening, Daniel texted me. "I'm coming tomorrow to get my things. Police escort. Don't try anything." I stared at those words for a long time. He had cheated. Humiliated me. Publicly replaced me. And now he wanted to arrive as the victim. I typed one word. "Okay." Then I opened the lease. Marcus and I spent half the night going through it line by line. Our apartment was in both our names, but Clause 7B covered abandonment. If one tenant removed personal belongings, left without notice, and showed intent not to return, the remaining tenant could secure the property and notify the landlord. Daniel had taken his keys, work bag, clothes, and overnight luggage. He had posted about leveling up with another woman. He had announced through action that he was gone. So I followed the rules. Saturday morning, I called a locksmith. By 11:40, the locks were changed. At 11:50, I emailed the landlord with screenshots, Daniel's texts, and Clause 7B highlighted. ICC, Ed Marcus. At noon exactly, the doorbell rang. Daniel stood there with his arms folded, trying to look wounded and powerful at the same time. 2 police officers stood behind him. At the curb, Vanessa leaned against a black Range Rover, sunglasses covering half her face. "I'm here for my things," Daniel said loudly. "I brought officers so you can't pull anything." "I'm afraid you can't come in," I said. His expression cracked. "My name is on the lease." "It is," I said. "But you abandoned the property. I've notified the landlord and secured it as the remaining tenant. If you disagree, you can contact the landlord or get a court order." Daniel turned to one officer. "She locked me out of my own apartment." The officer looked tired. "Sir, this is a civil issue. We're here to prevent a disturbance, not decide lease rights." I held up the printed email and highlighted clause. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. Vanessa stepped closer from the curb. "Just give him his stuff," she snapped. "Stop being pathetic." I looked at her. Then at her wedding ring. Then back at Daniel. I packed essentials. I reached inside and placed 2 boxes in the hallway. Toiletries, work clothes, chargers, his medication, a framed photo of him with his mother. The rest is in storage, I said. Your lawyer can coordinate professional pickup with mine. You are not to come back here. Daniel's face went pale with rage. You'll regret this. I believed him. But I also believed something else. For the first time in 5 years, regret was no longer mine to carry. I closed the door gently. Behind it, the apartment was quiet, not healed. Not peaceful yet, but mine. The strange thing about betrayal is that the actual cheating only lasts a moment. The aftermath is what consumes your life. For months, my existence became paperwork, phone calls, legal invoices, and carefully controlled breathing exercises while people tried to convince me I was the villain in my own destruction. Vanessa and Carter Hale had money. Real money. The kind that keeps lawyers on retainer the same way ordinary people keep groceries in their refrigerators. Letters arrived constantly. Threats.
Accusations. Demands.
One claimed I had illegally withheld Daniel's property. Another accused me of emotional harassment. One especially dramatic email implied my Instagram post had caused irreparable reputational damage. Marcus called that one rich people language for consequences. Meanwhile, Daniel kept trying to contact me outside legal channels. At first, his messages were angry, then wounded, then nostalgic, which somehow felt worse. One night, around midnight, he left a voicemail I listened to exactly once. You didn't have to humiliate me like that, Bianca, he said softly. Whatever happened between us, I still loved you. I sat in my dark kitchen after hearing that and laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. People always imagine betrayal looking monstrous, cruel, obvious. But often, it looks gentle.
Confused. Regretful.
That's what makes it dangerous. Daniel wanted forgiveness without accountability. He wanted me to separate his cruelty from his feelings as though intentions mattered more than choices. I deleted the voicemail. Then I blocked his number permanently. The turning point came 3 months later during the deposition. Marcus warned me beforehand. They're going to try making you emotional, he said. Don't help them. The conference room downtown smelled like coffee and printer toner. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, while attorneys arranged folders with theatrical seriousness. Daniel sat across from me, wearing a navy suit I had once helped him pick out for weddings. Funny how objects survive relationships. For one painful second, seeing him there cracked something open inside me. Muscle memory, familiarity, grief. Then Vanessa walked in behind him, and whatever softness remained disappeared immediately. She looked immaculate. Cream blouse. Perfect makeup. Hair styled into effortless waves that probably required 2 hours and professional products. But underneath all that polish, she looked tired. The kind of tired no concealer fully hides. Marcus leaned toward me quietly. Watch carefully, he murmured. People unravel slowly before they collapse all at once. Daniel's attorney started first. Miss Russo, he said, sliding a printout of my Instagram post onto the table. Would you agree this was intended to publicly shame Mr. Mercer and Miss Hale? No, I answered calmly. Then why post it? Because they already made the relationship public. He frowned slightly. But you tagged Eleanor Hale, a pregnant woman. Yes. You understood that could emotionally distress her. I held his gaze. I think discovering your husband is sleeping with another woman is emotionally distressing, regardless of who informs you.
Silence.
Tiny.
Sharp.
Marcus hid a smile behind his water glass. The attorney pivoted quickly. Then came the property accusations. Designer watches.
Furniture.
Electronics.
A Peloton bike Daniel barely used, but suddenly cared deeply about. They presented me like some bitter ex-girlfriend hoarding possessions for revenge. Marcus waited patiently until they finished. Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside were storage invoices, photographs, video inventory, timestamps, and signed receipts. Every single item documented. Every box cataloged. Every removal legally recorded. The belongings have remained available for retrieval since day one, Marcus said calmly. Provided Mr. Mercer covers storage and moving expenses outlined in our written notice. Daniel's attorney blinked. Clearly, he hadn't known that part. Then Marcus stood, and the atmosphere changed completely. He approached Daniel with the kind of politeness that feels more dangerous than anger. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "when exactly did your relationship with Miss Hale begin?" Daniel crossed his arms. "We were friends first." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Then he placed printed credit card statements onto the table. Large highlighted charges. Hotels. Restaurants. A Napa Valley resort. Dates circled in red. "Would you describe this weekend trip as friendship?" Daniel's jaw tightened. Vanessa stared straight ahead. Marcus continued. "These charges were made using a joint account shared with Miss Russo approximately 2 months before your public departure from the residence, correct?" Daniel shifted in his seat. It wasn't serious yet. That sentence hung in the room like smoke. Not serious yet. 5 years with me.
A secret affair.
Shared finances.
Public humiliation.
And somehow, that was his defense. Marcus didn't let him recover. "Were you aware Miss Hale was married?" "Yes." "Were you aware Mrs. Eleanor Hale was pregnant?" Daniel hesitated too long. "Yes." Marcus nodded once. Then he lifted another document. Printed screenshots. Daniel's messages. I recognized them instantly. Messages he had sent Vanessa while still sleeping beside me every night. "Bianca is comfortable, but she's not forever. I need someone who actually understands ambition. Sometimes love turns into obligation." Each sentence felt like reopening a wound with surgical precision. Daniel visibly paled as Marcus read them aloud. Across the table, Vanessa finally looked shaken too. Her perfect expression cracked. That was the moment I realized something important. Affairs survive in fantasy. Reality kills them. Sneaking around feels exciting until fluorescent lights, legal transcripts, and financial evidence drag everything into daylight. Marcus turned toward Vanessa next. "When did you first become romantically involved with Mr. Mercer?" Vanessa swallowed. "I don't remember." Marcus slid hotel receipts forward. "Perhaps these will help." Her hands started trembling. By then, the room felt less like a legal proceeding and more like watching two actors slowly forget their lines mid-performance. Under oath, stripped of filters and captions and curated social media versions of themselves, Daniel and Vanessa looked smaller.
Ordinary.
Weak. And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. I hadn't lost some extraordinary love story. I had lost an illusion. The deposition paused twice because Vanessa cried. Daniel barely spoke during the second half. The settlement offer arrived the next morning. Fast. Quiet. Almost desperate. Daniel dropped all claims to the apartment and property disputes. Vanessa and Carter's attorneys withdrew their accusations. Everyone suddenly wanted privacy again after spending months threatening public escalation. Interesting how quickly people rediscover dignity when evidence enters the room. I accepted the settlement immediately. Not because I forgave them. Because I was tired. There's a moment after prolonged emotional warfare where revenge stops feeling satisfying and starts feeling heavy. I wanted my life back more than I wanted them punished. As for Carter and Eleanor Hale, their marriage collapsed publicly within weeks. From what Marcus later heard through legal circles, Eleanor used everything during divorce proceedings. The screenshots. The timelines. The financial records. Carter lost the Range Rover. The lake house. Half his business assets. His social media disappeared entirely after that. Daniel and Vanessa stayed together, somehow. Trauma has a strange way of handcuffing people to each other. But according to mutual acquaintances, their relationship looked less romantic now and more like two survivors clinging to wreckage they caused themselves. And me? For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Healing is embarrassingly quiet. That's the part nobody tells you. After enough movies and dramatic stories, you expect recovery to feel cinematic. You imagine some huge emotional breakthrough where music swells and suddenly the pain disappears. Real healing is much less impressive. It looks like buying new coffee mugs because the old ones remind you of someone. It looks like changing your sheets at midnight because you suddenly cannot stand the smell of a person who no longer lives there. It looks like standing in grocery store aisles trying not to cry because you automatically reached for the yogurt flavor they liked. 3 weeks after the settlement finalized, I repainted the apartment. Daniel had always preferred cold colors, gray walls, black furniture, minimalist decor that looked expensive but strangely lifeless. By the end, our apartment had felt less like a home and more like a luxury hotel lobby where nobody actually relaxed. So, I changed everything. Warm lighting, plants, bookshelves, soft blankets Bruno immediately claimed as his personal property. The apartment finally started looking like someone lived there instead of staged there. Mine. That word mattered more than I expected. At first, the silence bothered me. Not because I missed Daniel specifically, because I missed noise. Relationships create constant background sound. Another person moving around, shower water running, random conversations from another room, arguments about what to order for dinner. After betrayal, silence becomes physical, heavy, especially at night. There were evenings I caught myself wondering whether Daniel missed me too. Then I would remember the Instagram story, the champagne glasses, the caption, and the grief would harden back into clarity. The truth was simple. People who truly love you do not enjoy humiliating you. That realization changed something fundamental inside me. A few months later, I saw Daniel and Vanessa together for the first time since the apartment confrontation. I was leaving a bookstore downtown when they walked past me on the sidewalk. For one strange second, all three of us froze. Vanessa still looked beautiful, but brittle somehow, like someone maintaining elegance through exhaustion. Daniel looked older, not physically.
Emotionally.
The confidence he used to wear so naturally now seemed forced, like an expensive jacket that no longer fit correctly. Neither of them spoke. Neither did I. We simply looked at each other while traffic moved around us and strangers continued walking past without realizing they were crossing through the remains of several ruined lives. Then Vanessa touched Daniel's arm quietly, and they kept walking. I expected rage,
Jealousy.
something dramatic. Instead, I mostly felt relief, because for the first time, I saw them clearly. Not as people who stole my future. Just two deeply flawed individuals trapped inside the consequences of their own choices. That distinction mattered. Bruno adjusted faster than I did. Dogs are emotionally healthier than humans. Within weeks, he had fully embraced being the sole recipient of my attention. He spread across the entire bed every night, like a king expanding his territory. Sometimes I would look at him snoring peacefully beside me and think, at least one man in my life remained loyal. Around 6 months after everything happened, Marcus invited me to dinner with a group of friends. I almost declined. For a long time, social interaction felt exhausting because every conversation eventually circled back to the scandal. People love public betrayal stories when they aren't happening to them. But Marcus insisted. "You've hidden long enough," he told me. So I went. And honestly, the dinner itself was forgettable. Too much wine. Too many lawyers discussing lawsuits like sports statistics. But afterward, while everyone stood outside saying goodbye, Bruno suddenly lunged toward a golden retriever tied near the patio entrance. The dog immediately dropped a slobbery tennis ball at my feet. "Sorry," a man's voice said behind me. He thinks every human exists purely for his entertainment. I turned. And there he was. Ethan Cole. Tall, dark-haired, slightly crooked smile. Not movie star handsome. Real handsome. The kind that grows on you instead of demanding attention immediately. His dog sat proudly beside him, wagging hard enough to shake its entire body. I laughed before I could stop myself. An actual laugh. The kind that comes naturally, instead of politely. That's Bruno, I explained. He's emotionally codependent. Winston has 3 ongoing rivalries at our dog park, Ethan said. One of them is with a squirrel. We talked for maybe 15 minutes. About dogs. The neighborhood. Coffee shops. Nothing important. Which somehow made it feel important. Because there was no performance in the conversation. No manipulation. No strategic charm. No careful image management. Just ease. Before leaving, Ethan smiled slightly. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? 6 months earlier, that question would have terrified me. Now it simply felt possible. Not magical. Not destiny. Just possible. And after everything I had survived, possibility felt like enough. That night, I sat on my couch with Bruno asleep against my leg and thought about how strange survival really is. You imagine betrayal destroying you permanently. And in some ways, it does. There are versions of innocence that never return after someone publicly humiliates you. Certain kinds of trust grow back differently once broken. Even now, I still sometimes hear that quiet, fearful voice asking, what if the next person lies too? What if this happens again? But another voice answers now.
Smaller. Steadier.
Then you survive again. That's the thing about storms. People focus so much on the destruction that they forget what comes afterward. The rebuilding. The rearranging. The unexpected peace of standing inside a life that finally belongs entirely to you. If I learned anything from Daniel, it's this. Public humiliation is never accidental. If someone is willing to disrespect you openly, they've already disrespected you privately long before that moment. I also learned that revenge alone doesn't heal people. Boundaries do. Truth does. Walking away does. And maybe most importantly, healing rarely arrives dramatically. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a calm apartment,
A loyal dog.
fresh paint on old walls, and a man with kind eyes asking if you want coffee.